Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3750. Today's date is all right. Sorry. I was okay. Yeah. So what I was trying to tell you, this is My Artifact episode number 3750. Today's date is December 9, 2025. It's been almost like a morning at 8:50 a.m. The weather is like 21 degrees Celsius. Yeah, it's kind of like a very good, but it felt a little bit of cold. Okay, yeah. I live in kind of like a really particular area where kind of like a lot of grassland and lot of trees over there. So basically, it kind of like a feel even more colder are here. But still, okay, it's cold. Yeah, but it's a good. I'm actually kind of like a soaking up the sun. I'm kind of like a sit directly kind of like a sucking the sun. Okay, yeah, my skin is kind of like a sucking the entire heat radiation, and I kind of like a feels really good. I'm kind of like a sitting at the rooftop and kind of like a simply feel really good and kind of like a recording this artifact, and yeah, it's great. All right, so should we jump into the question? All right, let's go. Let's jump into the question. Greatest question. Okay, yeah. All right, the question is, what if you could swap bodies with anyone? Oh, okay, that's a really good question. Yeah, I don't know, like when I try to kind of like assembly, there is only one thing that I pop up something in my head. Okay, and what is that thing? Okay, first of all, let's just understand first. Let's just give the kind of like a little bit something that matter to the people. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a force you to think about that reality. When I try to think about that reality, or oh, wait for a moment, let me pause here. All right, hello. Okay. All right, so should we start? Okay, I don't know what I was kind of like talking about. Okay, okay, I was actually talking about the question. What is actually question? Okay, question is, what if you could swap the body with anyone? Okay, yeah, I haven't really mentioned anything at all. Alright, yeah, first of all, what is actually this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a force you to think about that reality. When I try to think about that reality, or when I try to create that reality, I'm kind of like utilizing my knowledge and information to try to create this reality. Try to create this reality, and somehow it kind of like felt really good. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying, or do not seek for any kind of like information that I'm saying. It's just my opinion, and opinion are subjective. Now regarding about this question pop up one thing straight inside of my head: a movie consequences, a fiction story. Okay, yeah. I wanted to recommend a movie, and if you wanted to watch this movie, I personally recommend you to watch this movie. It's a really good movie. Okay, yeah. The movie name Everyday 2000. I'm not really sure when it kind of like a release, but search about Google, you will gonna find out Everyday movie. Okay, EVERYDAY, Everyday movie. It's a Hollywood movie, by the way. And this movie is like a kind of like a very somewhat something associate with this example, also associate with this question. Okay, so what exactly is this question? What is actually in this movie? So in this movie, so there is a person who born without a body. What do you mean born without body? Oh yeah, like basically it's a kind of like a soul who could born without body, and he actually swap the body every single day. Yeah, every single day. And this is kind of like a very weird, like a first time I kind of like get this idea. Can we do this thing, like a, is it actually happen like a swapping the body and things like that? It kind of like considered as a kind of like a power. But what if you could born with this kind of like a power, and you don't really have any body? Like, you still kind of like a bit like confused regarding about this thing now. Okay, I also get confused when I kind of like heard the synopsis about this movie, and I was like, what? Like, yeah, how? And like there are a lot of kind of like questions actually arise. Okay, yeah. First of all, how would you born without body? Okay, yeah. Like basically born is actually represented by kind of like simply the way that you born. Okay, yeah. So what exactly happened? So in this movie, there is a person who kind of like say this thing, who says this thing that he born as a kind of like a normal child. Okay, yeah. No, he doesn't really have his own body. Okay, like he born as a kind of like someone else body. Okay, yeah. The next day he swapped the body from that baby to different baby. Okay, and this is kind of like a something happened throughout the entire life. He always kind of like a something shifting body from every day, like from this baby to this baby to this baby to this baby to this baby, this guy to this and that and that. And there is no gender at all. He just kind of like a swap with anyone, like male, female, nothing at all. Oh yeah. But probably is this thing he understand that he is a male. Okay, yeah, he is a male. Okay, yeah, because the way that he has a kind of like interaction with a kind of like some women and things like that, he considered as a male. Even if he kind of like switch the body with a female, but still he, that soul is a male. Okay, yeah. And he was kind of like fall in love. The movie is actually represent that particular soul is actually falling in love with that particular girl. Okay, yeah, he's a teenager boy that's seen. Okay, yeah, he just kind of like fall in love with particular girl. But how do he supposed to be kind of like a, how do we supposed to kind of like a tell to her? It's kind of like something very weird and very like a, it's that. But there is also another question actually arise. Okay, yeah, when he kind of like somebody trap inside the different body, then what would be the host body? Like what would be the host soul? Okay, yeah. Like where is the host soul? Like basically is this thing, if someone kind of like somebody trap inside me, so where is my conscious? Where? So my conscious is kind of like somebody just off for that particular day. Okay, yeah. And that particular soul will kind of like somebody entered in my body and kind of like control everything. Okay, yeah. I didn't know anything at all. Okay, yeah. Next day I kind of like somebody wake up and I just kind of like realize that ki a kind of like a big hangover and things like that. Okay, and this is what kind of like a simply movie it represent. Okay, the host person is kind of like a simply turn off for that particular day. Okay, yeah. So this is kind of like a simply the movie plot. Okay. I highly recommend you to watch this movie. It's a really amazing concept, and you will actually learn a lot of things after this movie. Understand regarding about the life and things and that, the way that happened to them. It's, yeah, it's good. Okay, yeah, it's not really that kind of like a super crazy thing, super kind of like a something. No, it's not. It's a very beautiful story in itself, and obviously, I highly recommend to watch this movie. It's one of my favorite movie too, by the way, everyday movie. Okay, yeah. Whatever. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing regarding about the question. The question says that what if we could kind of like somebody swap the bodies? Okay, yeah. So basically, if we could swap the bodies, then probably is this thing that there is a bigger question actually arise. Okay, yeah. Who are we? Our identities are kind of like a somebody. Let's just say, like basically, just say I am a criminal, and I kill someone. Okay, yeah. I kill someone. Then I switch the body to the kind of like a somebody priest or something else. So basically, who is actually going to the jail? My body or the priest or what? Okay, yeah. This is kind of like a very weird example would be. Okay, yeah. Like basically our identity would be kind of like a somebody just nothing really at all, because throughout our entire human history, since the millions of years, what we are kind of like responsible for our action, and our action kind of like represent ourselves. Okay, yeah. What we are, what we could do, what we have fears, what kind of like a strength that we have, it kind of like tell us who we are. According to that, our body kind of like simply built in that way. Example, I am a particular person who likes fitness. Okay, yeah. So that's why I go to the gym. And because of I'm doing a gym, my body is kind of like really good. I have kind of like a abs and kind of like a biceps and things like that. So basically it's this thing that my consciousness is kind of like somebody represent throughout my body and things like that. Okay, yeah. So basically if someone switched my body to someone else, that someone else is kind of like a really not good at fitness or things like that, So what exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah. Is that this identity is like very fragile, very like how do I supposed to remember people? It's very not good thing. Okay, yeah. Because our identity represent us represent society, society represent countries and things and that and that. If we could kind of like swap our bodies or kind of like swap our kind of like some body one to another, then it's very bigger question actually arise. Okay, yeah. Then another thing is that how this thing actually happened. Like basically, can we able to do this thing? Can we able to swap the bodies? No, we cannot swap the body. And why this actually question actually arise? Okay, let me give you this thing. From since the beginning of the point of perspective, since the beginning of the human history, people started believe that there is a kind of like a simply two different part of our body. One part is a physical body, the way that body that we actually have, the legs and kind of like a hands and mouth and everything that we could supposed to be see. And there is another body that is called soul. Okay, yeah, atma, or kind of like a something things that kind of like a driven us. Consider as a kind of like something our body is a car and our soul is a driver. Okay, yeah. So it's kind of like a things, but in scientific point of perspective, that is not. That is definitely not. Okay, yeah. But why we think like that? Well, where is this kind of like a thought process came from? The thought process actually came from our intelligence. We could imagine, we could dream, we could kind of like create such a reality that does not exist in the real world. Imagine yourself that you are flying. Okay, yeah. You just kind of like sitting on your sofa doing nothing, but imagine that you are flying and you actually feel flying. You actually feel the kind of like a ripple of the air and things and that. You actually feel the gravity. You actually feel that things. And yeah, this is kind of like some reality. Okay, yeah. Now our mind is somewhere else, but our body is kind of like somewhere else. So that's why people started thinking that might be there is a kind of like a difference between our body and our soul. And since then we kind of like distribute this idea that our soul should supposed to be kind of like a something like a alive after the die, or kind of like a things. Our physical body will gonna kind of like a die, but the kind of like our soul is always be kind of like something alive. Okay, and things and that. And because of when we kind of like consider that our body and soul are kind of like a two different thing, and that's why this kind of like a conception is actually created that what if we could kind of like simply swap the soul or swap our kind of like a body to someone else or things or that, or a lot of things. Okay, yeah, we have a lot of kind of like movies and books regarding about the souls and things and that, but scientifically there is nothing at all scientifically represent that our soul and conscious and our body is one thing. It's not a kind of like a two different thing, nothing at all. Okay, so this is where is kind of like conception will gonna happen. Now I'm trying to think about kind of like assembly too much. Let's think about that. What if this thing happened? What if we could kind of like swap someone else's bodies or things like that? Then what could be happen? Then probably is that na if such thing will gonna happen, then probably is this thing that okay, we might not grow that much. Why am I saying this thing? Like what exactly is this thing? Okay, I don't know. I'm like every time I'm trying to kind of like point out that something happened, then probably it kind of like affect on our growth and things like that. Let me give you perspective. Let me give you the context so that you might gonna understand. I am not a good runner. Okay, yeah, and I have to be run. I have a race tomorrow, and I have to be run, but I cannot able to run. Okay, or maybe let's just say I have a race. Like let's just say I'm a kind of like assembly. I have a race almost like a week after. Okay, yeah. So what should I supposed to do now? Obviously, I have to be practice. I have to practice about the running techniques regarding about breathing pattern and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. Now basically when I try to do this thing, obviously I'm not good at that. I'm not really good at that kind of like how do I supposed to breathe. I'm not kind of like simply good at that. How do I supposed to running techniques and things like that. Obviously I could run. It's not really that I cannot able to run, but when you try to run for kind of like a professionalism, you have to be think about a lot of stuff like your breathing pattern, technicality, and all those stuff and stuff like that. I don't know that, but there is a lot of things. Okay, yeah. So for that particular purpose, you have to be learn. Okay, yeah, you have to bend the body regarding about your needs and things like that, and then you kind of like a run. Okay, yeah. You put the effort for entire week for kind of like a running as fast as better as it could, but when the race is actually start, your body switch to someone else, a kind of like a switch to someone else, that kind of like a person who kind of like a fat and doesn't really run for entire bit of lifetime. Then probably when this thing actually happened, would you able to win the race, even after you put all the effort to kind of like somebody for making you better and things like that, would you win the race? Definitely not. You will not gonna win the race. Okay, yeah. So for this particular purpose, we won't be able to improve. Our growth is not represented by effort. It represented by kind of like assembly switch to the another body. Example, if I am born as a beggar, what kind of like assembly way that kind of like assembly very efficient, very fast, so that I would supposed to become rich. Swap with the body with a rich person. That's it. Okay, swap your body with a rich person. So probably is this thing that you don't really have to kind of like assembly work and things like that. Even after you born as a kind of like a poor and things like that, still you kind of like a swap the body with a rich person, and yeah, you just kind of like a live the life probably. Yeah, somewhat something like that. Okay, yeah. So why do you supposed to put the effort? Like basically our growth is kind of like depend on we fail multiple times, and we fail because of that we are not had enough. Okay, we are not kind of like a good enough for that. So that's how we put the effort and things, that we kind of like choose a hard way to achieve something really good thing. And that is really good thing, by the way. And that is a kind of like a standard way to kind of like improve a growth and things and that. You put the effort to try to achieve things. But what if we could swap the body with someone else? Then probably why do I supposed to put the effort? Nothing really at all, na? Because if I wanted to run faster, switch the body with the athlete. If I wanted to be smarter, I wanted to switch the body with a smarter person. If I wanted to kind of like a bit really healthier person, then I wanted to switch the body to the kind of like a fitness guy. If I'm kind of like somebody look like a model, then I would kind of like switch my body to the kind of like a BTS person or things like that. So probably is this thing na ki, like basically I don't really have to do any kind of like effort. I just have to switch the body. I don't know how it's supposed to be, but I just have to switch the body and that's it. Probably is this happen. So identity will gonna cross. We will not gonna put the effort for our growth and things like that. And this might be kind of like a chaos will gonna happen. First of all, chaos will gonna happen at the moment. Who is actually who and who is actually this thing. Our identity is actually, yeah. Another thing is that if the switching a body, the procedure of switching a body is kind of like a bit more simple. Let's just say that I see this person, I switch the body, then it kind of like create even more chaos. Okay, yeah, because we are kind of like a living in society. We always been living in society, always being kind of like a people around us. And basically it's this thing that if someone kind of like a look at me and that particular person switch the body, then yeah, it's a very like a very, I don't know how am I supposed to explain this thing. It's a kind of like a feel like something that betrayal probably. Yeah. Okay. So when this thing happened, probably we would not supposed to be grow. Okay, definitely not. But there is also one thing that we should supposed to be learn. Like basically is this thing that we will kind of like a do a lot of preventive measure that people might not gonna swift the body with someone else. So we might kind of like improve or invent such a technology that we shouldn't supposed to be kind of like a have such thing that does not kind of like a something like a helmet, Magneto helmet. Okay, yeah. Like basically the Magneto is a X-Men character, by the way, who has a kind of like a certain helmet that Charles Xavier does not kind of like a get inside his head because he has this helmet. He's protecting himself. So we might have this kind of like a simply helmet that we kind of like a simply protecting from someone else and things like that. Okay, right? Then another thing is that still that helmet would be kind of like a simply very costly because it's kind of like a things that might be kind of like available for the rich people and things like that. And at that time there is also kind of a question actually arise that who is actually a rich person. Okay, yeah, Elon Musk is a rich person, or maybe kind of like a person who is kind of like inside the Elon Musk is a rich person. It's very hard to determine and things like that. Also government will gonna crippled. Obviously government run by the people, and basically people will actually switch the body and things like that. It's not really good thing. Another thing is that Regarding about the effective measurement, like basically is this thing, how much we kind of like put the effort and things like that. Like example is this thing, that rich people are kind of like wanted to make sure that swapping body is not a kind of like some things who supposed to be happen. So they are kind of like doing a lot of preventive measure to kind of like stop for them, stop for this. But for the poor people, they kind of like a think that okay, this is a kind of like a simply way to kind of like a simply life better, so they might gonna do this thing. Okay, yeah, I'm probably assisting the rich people might gonna kind of like a simply do kind of like a stuff that prevent this thing. But when he swap with another body, he might gonna sorry. Oh boy, he might gonna kind of like a something not gonna do. It's a very fragile thing. It's very hard to imagine what would be that particular world. Okay, yeah, if I try to imagine this particular world, then it's very hard to imagine. Okay, yeah, because like I only see the destruction. Like I didn't really see any kind of like a hope and things like that. And if such thing will gonna happen since the beginning of the human evolution, then probably we will not gonna be rich here. We will not gonna be kind of like a improve, or kind of like we will not gonna kind of like a growth that we kind of like a growth that we are seeing right now. Even if we have intelligent things like that, but still we could kind of like switch the body, then probably just nothing really at all. There is also one thing that we might kind of understand other people point of perspective, but still it's not. Yeah, like basically is this thing, it's a kind of like a thing is that na ki, if you kind of like a somebody give the people a kind of like a somebody way that how they should supposed to be make the life as much as better with a less effort and things like that, then it became kind of like a somebody standardization, it became normal. Okay, yeah, that okay, let me tell you one thing, what is actually normal. If you wanted to succeed in your life, you have to put the effort, hard work and things, and that is called normalization. That is a standard, by the way, and everyone follows that thing. But in this reality, when everyone are kind of like a swapping the body, then probably this is not the standardization. Like basically this, what is really standardization means, like that ki find a rich person and swap the body, that's it. This became a kind of like a standardization. So basically, what is the right thing and what is actually wrong thing? There is a question actually arise, because right thing and wrong thing comes from our experience, and our experience is kind of like always kind of like a have one thing to need a kind of like a find a rich body, or find the kind of like a person who kind of like a rich man or things like that. But if such thing will gonna happen since the beginning of the human evolution, growth will not gonna happen. But one thing is that ki everyone will gonna everyone will gonna kind of like assembly treat equally. Okay, and will this will gonna happen, then government or everything or every human are kind of like a treat as a equally. Is it good thing? Well, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Okay, yeah, let me give you tell me. Okay, let me tell you the perspective. I am belong to the India, and our Prime Minister is a Narendra Modi, by the way. Okay, yeah, and he is one of the most powerful person in our country. Okay, why he is very powerful person? Because he is a Prime Minister. Okay, yeah, he holds lot of amount of power and things, and that. He is actually responsible for growth and things. He is also responsible for kind of like making sure that our country should support growth and things like that, because he holds the power. Okay, yeah, what if everyone's are equal, everyone are kind of like somebody equal and things like that, then probably who would supposed to be handle this responsibility? And if I kind of like give them a particular person, that this particular person would kind of like handle this responsibility, next day he would kind of like swap the body with someone else, and that particular person might gonna utilize his power for wrong purposes or wrong reason, right? So growth is like a growth is actually happened by kind of like a things that keep a person who kind of like holding the power and utilize that power for right purposes, right? Equality is not the kind of like a some, yeah, equality is kind of like a somewhat something to understand the people point of perspective, that is okay. But when we try to growth and things like that, we need a kind of like a little bit of hierarchy, or people need a kind of like a some particular people to understand and think. I don't know how to supposed to explain, might be I'm kind of like completely wrong. Yeah, equality, that we might gonna understand that ki we might gonna understand their pain and things, and that or their point of perspective, but reality would be kind of like a very different than that. Because let me give you the perspective, this is kind of like just a thought process regarding about what if we could swap the bodies and things like that. In reality, this is very chaos happened, dude, very very chaos. Okay, yeah, destruction without destruction I haven't really seen any kind of like a good stuff. Nothing really at all. All right, this is my thought process regarding about the particular context. By the way, it's really good to think about that particular stuff. And I also highly recommend to watch this movie. Not a sponsor, by the way. Okay, yeah. Everyday movie. Watch this movie. Really good. And this is it. And thank you.